with Jonathan and Rachel.
Welcome to it, ladies and gentlemen. And we say welcome to Mick Pluddemann. Hey, Mick.
Hi, Jonathan.
So good to have you in studio. Thanks for your time.
It's a great pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
So our timing couldn't have been better because last week we heard about the 12.7% Eskom tariff hike. Then on a Friday afternoon, the news broke that, hey, load shedding's back. I think we ended up on stage 3, if I'm not mistaken. Fortunately, that came to an end on Sunday, but still,
quickly,
it reminded all of us. I mean, I was driving Saturday morning, having met my family at the vet and driving, and there's this massive intersection, and the lights are not working. And it was a nightmare.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. Before we get into it, just quickly in way of introduction, Mick is an engineer. He's a project manager. He's somebody who's passionate about preserving the beauty that is the planet that we live on.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much. We couldn't have been speaking to somebody more qualified in my book, I reckon, but that's just me.
Thank you. Yeah.
So how do we deal with this as citizens of this beautiful country?
So the first good news about the tariff increase, we in Cape Town and other municipalities still have 3 months reprieve. So our increases come into effect on the 1st of July.
Okay.
But they're coming. And they're coming massively.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. Every year on the 1st of July is the tariff increase moment. And electricity is just continuing to be hugely expensive. And my answer to that is quite clearly, the sun doesn't send you an invoice.
True story.
Solar power, while you do have to do an upfront investment, is such a great investment to save you in the longer run, in the long term. And it's not only about your money, as you've touched on briefly. I'm passionate about preserving our beautiful planet for future generations. And at the rate we're going, and at the rate we as a human race are burning oil and coal and so on, we're doing a really bad job at preserving our planet. And so going to renewable energies, and solar is one of the most obvious ones and easiest ones to multiply on a small scale, is the way we absolutely have to go.
Fantastic.
Absolutely, Mick. And when it comes to just your basic household expenses, what would you say is like the highest that takes the consumers the most?
So if you look at your electricity consumers, probably in an average, let's call it modest household, your single biggest user of electricity is your hot water. Yes. You're probably spending 750 Rand a month just keeping your water hot. That maybe it's a little bit less. I was just trying to do the maths in my head. But 7,500 Rand a year over 20 years, that's 150,000 Rand you're going to be spending just to keep your water hot over the next years, you know. So that's your biggest single one. Then if you've got other big items, luxury items, shall we call them, like air conditioning units, pool pumps, that sort of thing.
Oven as well.
So ovens are big, and then fridges aren't that big as consumers, but they're running around the clock.
Okay.
Your 24/7 items are your fridges, your Wi-Fi maybe, if you have an alarm system, things like that are running all the time. They're ticking over in the background and they're clocking up your electricity. Absolutely.
And with the load shedding this past weekend, rude awakening, you know, you're trying to fall asleep and then the power comes back on and somebody in the neighborhood doesn't have the power to keep the alarm system going. So the power goes on and the alarm goes off.
Don't we love it?
Yeah, you'll love it to bits. Absolutely. You can fall asleep easily when that's happening. But in that regard, you know, just let's talk about practically. I mean, we don't all have 100,000 Rand lying around that we can invest in solar, but there's some things that you can do now already, and touching specifically on your geyser and that kind of stuff. Give us some practical advice, please, Mick.
Look, my first practical advice is reduce your electricity consumption. Everything that you can do to reduce your consumption is saving you directly, literally. Then next thing, try and reduce your dependency on City of Cape Town or Eskom. And that's obviously where solar comes in. And if you have a modest budget, if you don't have a lot of savings, the one thing you can do for relatively little is heat your water with solar. Get a system that's just dedicated to your hot water, it may cost you 25 or 30,000 rand, and I know those aren't small numbers for many of people out there.
Yeah.
But you will feel the saving immediately. The very next month, you'll feel the saving. It'll have paid for itself in 2 to 3 years.
Wow.
And in the next 15, 20 years, it's going to save you 150,000 rand.
Sure.
And if those sound like big numbers, remember, you're going to pay 150,000 rand over that time if you don't do it, if you continue.
And that's based on kind of the current
Absolutely.
price. And we know that
Yeah.
NERSA and Eskom, well,
Yeah.
Eskom more specifically, are constantly pushing. We need more
Yeah.
money. We need bigger increases.
The last 15 years, the inflation of electricity is more than double what the normal inflation has been.
Sure.
You know, and that's not, I don't want to knock Eskom, but that's not likely to change.
Sure.
So while your day-to-day expenses may be going up by 5 or 6% a year, your electricity is going up 12% a year, and it's going to continue doing so.
Sure.
So investing in solar is just,
it's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer.
So Mick, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. So what kind of cost are we looking at for maybe just running a basic? You mentioned geyser, getting that onto a solar power. What else can we do?
So yes, like a standalone system for your geyser may be in the region of 25 to 30,000 rand, and that's then dedicated to your geyser, and is not going to cover you for load shedding on your plugs and your lights.
Yeah.
Your geyser will still be warm, even if
Yes.
there's lots of load shedding, but your lights and plugs. So the next thing to do is now actually investing in a system that is wired into your house. That means your electrics of your house, which is your lights and your plugs and so on, are now not being fed only by Eskom directly or by City Council, but via an inverter that gets power from solar on the one hand, is also tied to the electricity grid, and would typically have a battery as well for backup. Now, those systems are more expensive.
Yeah.
And you're, depending on your house and your consumption, you are looking at probably over 100,000 easily for good systems. I would really, sorry, I'm doing a quick diversion. I would really advise people not to try and skimp by cutting corners on systems like this. This is like having a car that is not, if you're buying, I'm going to say cheap and nasty, please don't do it, because it's all about safety. It's like running a car that doesn't have proper brakes, or the lights aren't working and so on. It's a hazard on the road for others and yourself. So please put in systems that are well installed, electrically compliant, and done well. And that is going to cost you, but it's a good investment. And even if you're paying 100, let's say 120, 150,000 rand for a system, going back to our earlier thing, that's going to take a few years to pay for itself, but you'll be saving big time. If you're in your house for the next 10, 15, 20 years, invest now, because you'll be saving in the long term.
Yeah.
That's the reality.
That is the reality. Mick is from Solid Light Solar, and we're going to ask you just to stick around a little bit longer, because we see a few questions coming through, and we've got some more questions that we'd like to deal with. So, Mick, if you don't mind, that'll be great.
Yes.
We'll definitely continue the conversation. Maybe you've got a specific question that you would like to ask Mick. Feel free to send it through on our WhatsApp number 061 798 1075.
Power Flow Exhaust Salt